Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial in my Making Snake and Ncurses tutorial series. If you haven't seen the previous tutorials, feel free to go check those out. I recommend doing that before you watch this tutorial. Put a little card up above to the playlist for this series, as well as maybe the previous tutorial. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing and hitting the all notifications on that bell icon. Really helps me out and motivates me to keep making these tutorials, and that way you'll get the content right when I make it. Also, if you guys like this content, please consider hitting that thumbs up and commenting below any questions or comments you have on what I've done here today. But anyways, as you guys can probably already tell, this tutorial is going to be a little bit different from what I normally do. I have OneNote open and I'm going to be doing some doodles here. Essentially, I just wanted to do a little bit of design and forethought before we jump into the project here. It's good sometimes to think about the project ahead of time before you jump into it. That way you don't make some decisions that you could have make some wrong decisions that you could have not made if you just thought about it ahead of time. So today I'm not going to be doing any like UML documents or use cases or anything like that. I just kind of want to be going over in a little bit of detail what we'll be using for our main design pattern. Now, if you haven't seen it already, up here on the top, we're going to be using the Mvc Design Pattern, and when I say using, I mean very loosely. Some of you may be familiar with MVC, and some of you may be groaning because you don't like MVC. I'm not a huge fan of MVC myself even, but I think it kind of suits the project we have here, and it'll just make it a little bit easier to separate out and make sure that we don't have a bunch of tightly coupled classes in our project. But anyways, I'm just going to be doing a very quick, brief overview of the MVC design pattern. So for those of you who aren't familiar with MVC, it essentially has three components: the model component, which is what the M stands for; the view component. For some reason I can't spell today. I also apologize, I have really terrible handwriting, but hopefully you can still read it. So that's the model, the view, and then the C is the controller component of the pattern. So essentially the way that MVC works is you have these three components, and they each are responsible for their own response. They're each responsible for a different aspect of the program. So the view essentially represents what the user is actually going to see. It also handles any interaction between the user and the program. So the view essentially shows the user something, and it handles any input. Now that input gets passed up to the controller. Now what the controller does is it takes that input and it makes any changes to the models that it needs to based on what the input was. So, say the user presses the right arrow key, that will get passed to the controller, and then the controller will say, okay, well, what do I need to do to update the model? So then it updates the model. I'll draw an arrow back here just to close the loop. That model back, or arrow back, is basically just saying, we update the model and get a new version of the model back at the controller. Then the controller says, okay, now that we have an updated model, we need to update the view. So you can kind of see our feedback loop here. We get an input from the user, we supply it to the controller updates the model, takes that updated model, and passes it back to the view for displaying. So it's a very simple design pattern, and just to get an idea of what each component of our project is going to be, I'm just going to delete this stuff here. And so, for instance, in our model category, we might have our snake. We might also have the apple. So the apple is the thing that the snake actually eats. For our controller, we'll probably have something like the game itself. The game is kind of the controller, the main controller here. This isn't a huge project. In a bigger project, you might have more controllers. In some projects, you might have a controller for each model. I personally don't like the controller for each model thing. I prefer to have, especially in this case, probably just one controller. We may have multiple controllers. Again, that's why I kind of say we're loosely basing this on the MVC pattern. I don't know if it's going to strictly adhere to the MVC pattern, but it's kind of the MVC pattern. So, and then for our view, we might have something like the actual board, which we created in the last tutorial. we may have the information, so like the score of the game. So every time you get an apple, you update the score by 100 points or 200 points or 1 point, whatever we decide as we go along. So this is kind of what we're going to be doing in this tutorial series. If you want some more info about the MVC pattern, I recommend looking it up. Like I said, very loosely based on it, what we're going to be doing here, but I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of an idea, especially because as I move along with these tutorials, I'll probably say things like model, controller, and view, just to help understand what we're actually working on and separate these concepts out. So that's it for this tutorial, guys. I hope you liked it. I know it's probably a pretty short one, but I'll have another one coming out probably in a few days after this one comes out, showing actually, moving into building these things. Like we'll probably build a game class next, or maybe the snake. I think we'll start with the game class. But yeah, anyways, if you like this, please, again, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing and turning on all notifications, and if you have any questions or comments, please put them below. I try to respond to everything, and any questions or anything, I gladly answer. So hope you guys are having a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.